Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So as I mentioned a little earlier tonight, I was going to be covering the Q&A, so let's get straight into it. Question 1. Who's the most significant Season 1 character you invented for the show? There's no one fully invented. Anyone new is either a character pulled from somewhere in the series and changed, or a composite of groups or types of characters personified in one individual, other than Steve, obviously. So obviously, what I love most about this answer is everything in terms of the characters that we're going to be seeing in the show are all going to be in one way or another from the creation of Robert Jordan. So anything that is on the screen would have come from his mind and his way of thinking of how he wanted the book series to be. Obviously now changing into an adaptation for a TV show, characters are going to get cut, especially minor ones, so you might see maybe 3 or 4 smaller characters jammed together into one, which is most likely probably the case. And that's alright. I mean, we all know there's hundreds upon hundreds of characters that are introduced throughout these 14 books. So it's inevitable this was going to be the case, and I'm happy with that. How difficult was it to change or leave out characters from the books for screen adaptation? Sometimes very difficult, obviously. People who drive the story or shed light on our characters' backstories or the world of the show always will be more likely to make an appearance, but some people are there in glimpses or subtle nods just for our enjoyment. Some extras were named as characters and given things /looks from the books, so keep your eyes peeled. It's nice to know this kind of be a somewhat of a inclusion just for the book fans in terms of seeing certain people in glimpses or extras named as characters that only us who have read the books will get and understand. It kind of just feels a more separate, I don't know how to put it, a separate feeling for us all, something kind of to geek out at that other people, I don't know, casual viewers of the TV show that haven't read the books won't be able to get or recognize or understand. Almost kind of like an inside joke per se. How many times did I give you blank stares when discussing possible changes? This one is obviously from Sarah N. There were moments when a thrilled room full of writers would go, "We've cracked it. It's amazing," but can insert book canon person / place / thing be insert non-canon ideas instead? And Sarah's resounding withering stare would tell us to go back to the drawing board. Rip Herring talking to a bear. Bloody hell. I'm glad that got nicked. I have to say, Perrin talking to a bear is a bridge too far, even for me. That just wouldn't sit well with me. Oh, that's just funny. I'm glad Sarah knocked that on the head. Oh, God. But to go on a more serious note, I'm glad that Sarah had a resounding withering stare when having non-canon ideas. I don't particularly want loads of non-canon ideas brought into the show. As much as they can stick to the original content and canon that Robert Jordan set is how they have to approach this. I just cannot imagine anything that hasn't been written by Robert Jordan or obviously Brandon being used in this show. It just wouldn't feel right, no matter how good it sounds to people in their heads or in the writers' rooms. Sticking to everything that's in the books, to me, is the absolute key to keeping this as authentic as it possibly can be. In the books, we always enter the story on the wind. Will that be a convention we see a lot? We've tackled the wind in the pilot in what I think is at least unexpected but rewarding way. Excited to see what you all think of it. Now, this particular question and subject has always been one that's intriguing for me. I've always wondered how would they tackle the wind? And would it be like used as an intro to every episode? Would it be audio, or would it be, I don't know, visual? And with Rafe saying it's handled in an unexpected manner, I'm kind of leaning towards it being more to a visual stimuli. I could quite easily envisage each episode starting with, I don't know, leaves falling off a tree and then the wind carrying it down as it pans out from, I don't know, way up in the air down to the city they start in, or the town, or the mountainside. You know what I'm getting at. Just it flowing into the opening scene. I think that would be a pretty cool and neat way to start every episode. Do you have to change character personalities for a screen adaptation? We try not to. Most of our job is about making sure that we create a story and scenes that can tell the audience about character motivations and why they're doing something they're doing, when we can't just drop into their head and say it like you can in a book. This often results in some of the biggest changes, but they're ultimately put in to make sure that the character on screen is as emotionally true as possible. Were there any changes in earlier drafts of scripts that were scrapped in final version? Yes, tons. We are never afraid to try something and see if it works, but then that has to also go through Sarah and me. I drive the writers as crazy as anyone would sticking to the books. It also then goes to Brendan Sanderson, Harriet McDougall, and Maria Simmons, who've been huge helps in checking us and helping us go back to the drawing board on changes. Or many times saying, that works, and giving us permission to release a tiny sigh of relief. Are there some major characters that appear in the first book that won't appear in the first season? Yes. And some of them are still slated to appear in later seasons. Again, approaching the adaptation of the series, not just each book individually. A few of these characters I bet you already expect this for, and one at least I think will surprise you. That's an interesting one. Now, this is something that's been extensively covered across all the Wheel of Time YouTubers and content creators. I pretty much do not have to add anything to this conversation. We all pretty much think Elaine and her family aren't going to be turning up in the first season at this point. And kinda Rafe alludes to that in his answer, and also says there's someone that we possibly haven't even thought of, and it's going to surprise us. Now, as far as who could that be, that's a little bit more intriguing to have a think about. Have there been any major locations or city that you've had to cut for budget, time, or logistics? This is perhaps the biggest source of changes for us. Even with the massive amount of money Amazon has kindly given us to bring this world to life. To go to as many unique cities, villages, or locations as they do in the books is simply impossible. We have chosen to do a few places extremely well, both culturally and with production design, instead of doing dozens of places cheaply and badly. This results in many changes that have huge ripple effects. If you can't go to Berlin, do you still meet Min? Do you still encounter the White Cloaks? Do you still have dreams of Baalzamon, etc.? I'm betting that most things that feel the most unnecessarily changed to people from the books, even if they're hugely separated from that specific location, will be born out of a location-specific change. Now, this is something I've always known would happen. As we all know, there's far too many locations that are visited within this first book, and there was never going to be the budget to be able to go to every single one of them. And let's not even look at it from a budget standpoint. There wouldn't be enough time in the first season to do that, to wrap it up in the way they were intending to. And so what you're left with is, what are the cities where the most important passages within the first book occur? So naturally, you're going to have Emond's Field, as obviously that's where the first few scenes take place, where you first meet the characters. But then after there, it becomes a little bit more of a difficult challenge in terms of which cities do you keep and which do you not. Because of course, the ones you cut are going to have long-term repercussions in how you go about reintegrating certain scenes that we know happen within those cities into other cities. And I think that therein lies the challenge they've all had. Did you attempt to keep book dialogue or start from scratch? Every writer receives a document when they begin their script, put together by our book expert Sarah, that breaks down every scene in the episode and gives specific dialogue and scene references from the books for it. Especially for scenes that aren't from the books at all, we will find scenes from the books with the same characters together or talking about the same thing thematically. That said, predictably, almost all the dialogue in the show is not from the books, so as to sound as natural as possible with our locations, actors, scenes as they're played. How far through the series did you consider when making changes in terms of repercussions? We have to consider it for the entire series, which has led to many in-room conversations / screaming matches where someone is like, the yellow sister healing someone in this scene cannot be Chesmal Emery. Are you kidding me? Do you know anything about Chesmal Emery? What did you just Google? What did you? What? Did you just Google a random yellow sister and name and pick one you liked? Fuck you and your yellow sister. It's not going to be fucking Chesmal Emery. I guarantee you that. Have you made changes that hurt you or Sarah to make, but were necessary for the screen? The writer's room floor is littered with my tears. Truly though, I don't want people to be unprepared for how different the show is to the books. To do a proper adaptation, it has to be. As a thought exercise, just imagine we can only do 4 of the cities from Eye of the World. So from Emond's Field, Tarren Ferry, Baerlon, Shadar Logoth, White Bridge, Four Kings, Breen Spring, Caerhillim, Faldara, which do you choose? What are the knock-on effects for character and story from the ones you don't go to? Which characters haven't met each other now, and how can you reconnect them? We have amazing writers and hugely helpful support in Brandon and Harriet to tackle these changes, but they're not small. Gird your loins, my friends. What made you change Thom playing the lyre to the guitar? Thom is a good example of changes made for the show. I want characters to appear when we have the time to spend with them to properly introduce them and get enough scenes for them to attract the great actor for the role. You will never see scenes on this show where 4 random people appear, say 2 lines and poof, just disappear for seasons. It just won't get you the caliber of actor you need, and it doesn't properly intro that character to the audience. So for Thom, we wanted to give him a proper introduction, and we also wanted him to have a strong masculine energy that made a counterpoint to Moiraine. We saw actors of all ages, races, and vibes to play Thom, but when Alex Wilmue tape came through, we knew he was Thom and moved towards his vibe for the character, which was younger and grittier than book Thom. The guitar looks much more fitting in his hands with his voice than a lyre. I know I'm pronouncing that wrong, but whatever. When he stomps onto stage in the show, it's a moment. And that's what we wanted for Thom. Never fear, Multicolored Cloak is still in existence, but different than you imagine. Isis, who's their costume designer, nailed it. And then finally, the last question. How much of the monster / Trolloc Fade Draktar design is being done practically versus digital effects? Mostly makeup and prosthetics? And with that, how closely does the design match the text? totally smooth faces on fades, varieties of Trollocs, etc. We have worked hard to use as many practical effects and pieces as possible for Trollocs/fades, but don't want to spoil all the secrets until you watch the behind the scenes after the first season. Yeah, behind the scenes. Love it. And that is the end of the Q&A. I hope you all enjoyed it, and it gave you some insightful answers to maybe some of the questions you might have had. So yeah, this is most likely going to be the last video for this year. So in case you don't hear from me again, I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And yeah, stay safe out there. And let's just hope 2021 brings everybody a much better bloody year. Because it can't get any worse than this now, can it?